Before the story begins, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more HFY sci-fi stories. Your support helps these tales of humanity echo across the stars, and today's story is one worth hearing. Captain Rourke Hale had always believed he'd seen the last surprise the galaxy could offer him, right up until the day he stepped into the ruined Earth outpost and heard the faintest sound. A soft, broken whine buried under dust, steel, and decades of silence. At first he thought it was a malfunctioning servo or a damaged filtration unit. Then the sound came again, fragile but alive. Hale stopped breathing for a moment, not because he feared danger, but because the sound didn't belong in a dead world. He pushed aside collapsed beams and the brittle remains of a cryolab door. What lay inside seemed at first like a mass of cables and cracked frost, but as he knelt, a small movement stirred, a paw the size of his palm trembling. A creature blinked up at him through a haze of frostmelt and instinctual fear. Hale recognized it instantly. Not from experience, no human alive had ever seen one outside of old holodocks, but from the stories his father told him as a boy. A wolf pup. An animal the Dominion had declared extinct long before Hale was born. Hale reached out, slowly, hand steady even as his pulse quickened. The pup tried to growl, but it came out more like air escaping a damaged pipe. He wrapped the tiny creature in his jacket and whispered almost reverently, "You're not supposed to exist." That moment became the quiet center around which the next years of Hale's life would orbit. Ghost grew quickly aboard Hale's patrol vessel. The pup's fur stayed a cold, impossible white, and his eyes shifted from uncertain blue to a keen amber that read every intention before Hale spoke it. At first, Ghost clung to him, skittish around machinery, terrified of loud noises. But wolves adapted. That was their legend. And Ghost adapted faster than any creature Hale had ever witnessed. Within months, he moved with fluid purpose through the ship's narrow corridors, padding silently at Hale's side during drills and inspections. He tracked scents with uncanny precision, recognized Hale's moods before Hale recognized them himself, and watched every door, vent, and shadow the way soldiers scanned for ambushes. One night, during a frontier patrol, Ghost stood at Hale's bunk and barked a warning seconds before a rogue micrometeor cluster struck the hull. Hale sealed the breach in time only because Ghost had sensed something. Vibrations? Pressure shifts? Hale never found an answer. But from that night on, he accepted one truth. Ghost wasn't merely a remnant of an extinct species. He was something else entirely. A survivor shaped not just by nature but by whatever experimental scientists had done to preserve Earth's predators during the collapse. For 3 years they traversed the outer rim together. Pirates learned quickly not to test them. More than one raider ship retreated after reviewing Hale's record and noticing the silhouette of a wolf pacing behind him in debrief footage. Frontier outposts whispered about the ghost dog, with teeth like old Earth steel and eyes that saw through lies. Hale ignored the rumors. Let the galaxy invent whatever stories it needed. Ghost was his responsibility, his partner, and the only living reminder of a world humanity had failed to protect. The Dominion, however, did not ignore the rumors. The summons arrived without warning, transmitted through encrypted channels and marked with the seal of the High War Council. Hale read it twice, jaw tightening each time. Humans were rarely invited to the council chambers unless something had gone terribly wrong, and the message made that clear. He was ordered to report immediately to the Citadel to address multiple allegations of biological misconduct by frontier forces. Thinly veiled accusations. Someone wanted a public spectacle. He didn't even need to guess who. Commander Valtor had despised humanity since Hale's first year in service. To him, humans were unpredictable predators, beings who climbed too quickly up the galactic ladder and clung stubbornly to their old instincts. Valtor would seize any excuse to humiliate them. If he'd learned even a whisper about Ghost, then the summons wasn't a request, it was a trap. Hale considered leaving Ghost behind, but the wolf refused the moment the ship's engines powered up. Ghost simply walked to the boarding ramp, sat, and watched Hale with unblinking certainty. Hale folded his arms, staring back. The Citadel isn't frontier space. Whole damn place is allergic to anything with teeth. Ghost flicked an ear, unimpressed. Hale sighed. Fine. But stay close. And don't bite anyone unless they deserve it. Ghost rose, brushed his side against Hale's leg and stepped aboard. The Citadel appeared in the viewport hours later, a titanic structure suspended in orbit like an iron crown. Thousands of ships swirled in rigid formation around it. Diplomats, merchants, soldiers, and entire species moved through its ports each day, but Hale felt only a heavy pressure in his chest. This wasn't a summit. It was a stage. As he docked, The comms unit crackled with Dominion protocol instructions and thinly masked hostility. Hale followed each command with mechanical discipline, though Ghost growled softly whenever a new voice barked orders. The boarding ramp lowered, and alien delegates paused mid-stride as Hale stepped out with the enormous white wolf at his heel. Conversations halted. Eyes widened. Guards instinctively reached for weapons. Hale kept walking. A Dominion officer hurried forward, face tightening. "Captain Rourke Hale, you were instructed to arrive unarmed." "I did," Hale replied. The officer pointed sharply at Ghost. "That creature is a Class 3 predator." Hale didn't break stride. "He's with me." Gasps and mutters rippled through the arrivals hall. Alien eyes tracked the wolf's every step. Ghost walked in absolute silence, head level, tail low but confidence unshaken. Hale felt the tension in the air thicken as he approached the central procession corridor leading to the council chambers. He could almost hear Valtor's satisfaction echoing through the walls. The Dominion wanted outrage. They wanted scandal. They wanted fear. Hale intended to give them something else entirely. As the corridor doors slid open and the golden light of the council chamber spilled out, Ghost pressed close, sensing the shift. Hale rested a hand briefly on the wolf's shoulder, steadying both of them. Whatever waited inside, accusations, political traps, or the Dominion's full fury, they would face it together. And when Hale stepped across the threshold, he saw the rows of alien delegates turning toward him, watching the human and the not-extinct beast beside him. Their expressions ranged from shock to curiosity to outright horror. Good, he thought. Let them look. Because the galaxy was about to learn that some species don't vanish quietly. Some return. And some return with teeth. The doors sealed behind them and the real conflict began. The citadel was more intimidating than Hale had anticipated. Towering walls of black alloy reflected the artificial starlight, while streams of delegates moved in measured chaos, their shapes alien, limbs and appendages unfamiliar, eyes unblinking and calculating. Every step Hale took was a test, and every gaze felt like a probe into his intentions. Ghost padded silently at his side, head low, eyes alert, muscles coiled with restrained power. Together they moved as one, a human and a predator in perfect tandem. Whispers rippled through the corridors. Some species recoiled instinctively, others froze, captivated. Hale ignored them. The council's protocols allowed him no hesitation. He navigated the labyrinthine passageways toward the main chamber, his mind calculating angles, potential threats, and escape routes should the situation collapse. Ghost's ears twitched, picking up vibrations Hale could not sense, a living radar attuned to subtle danger. A Dominion officer approached, voice sharp, edged with command. "That creature cannot enter the council hall. It violates the Species Preservation Treaty." Hale looked down at Ghost, who met his gaze unwaveringly and said, "He's not a weapon. He's a witness." The officer's lips tightened and he barked an order. Guards stepped forward. Ghost's fur bristled, muscles tensing like drawn springs. Hale's hand hovered near the wolf's flank, not touching but enough to signal calm, to channel trust. Ghost exhaled slowly but the warning growl rumbled in his chest. The guards faltered, hesitant to advance. They had trained for battle, not for a creature whose presence radiated both intelligence and authority. Hale's voice cut through the tension. "I'm here to show that wolves are not extinct. That what you call a lost species still exists, and that what you fear in us is born from ignorance, not reality." His words carried weight, not just in meaning but in delivery. Steady, commanding, impossible to dismiss. Some delegates shifted in their seats, curiosity overtaking protocol. Others exchanged glances of disbelief. The room was no longer a stage of intimidation. It had become a courtroom of revelation. A low murmur ran through the assembly as Hale stepped forward. Ghost matched each movement with precision, a silent guardian. Alien delegates craned their necks, trying to decipher the nature of this predator that defied every record. The wolf's presence was an argument in itself, a living, breathing contradiction to centuries of Dominion decrees. Hale could sense the fear mingled with fascination. He knew that if he played his next moves carefully, this moment could tip the balance. Commander Valtor's voice boomed over the chamber, dripping with contempt. "Captain Hale, do you intend to mock the council with a primitive animal? You stand accused of smuggling a Class 3 predator into restricted areas. Explain yourself or prepare to face judgment." Hale did not flinch. His gaze locked on the commander. "I'm not here to mock anyone. I'm here to show the truth. Wolves were never truly extinct. This one," he gestured to Ghost, "is proof. Proof of resilience, of survival, of what you failed to understand when you erased our species from your records. Valtor's features hardened, scales rippling as his anger flared. You presume to lecture the council? You bring a beast into this chamber and expect your words to carry weight. Hale's eyes narrowed. The beast is not the story. The story is what it represents. Survival, adaptability, intelligence. It is what humanity has always embodied. You may have tried to erase us, but we persist. And this wolf survives as we do. A delegate from a distant system leaned forward, tentacles brushing the floor. Show us its capabilities, he suggested, voice tinged with intrigue. If it is as you claim, it may have value beyond propaganda. Hale inclined his head slightly. Ghost's amber eyes met his, and the command was silent but understood. The wolf shifted, sniffing the air, ears flicking to sounds undetectable by human hearing. He moved closer to the delegates, deliberately slow, measured, demonstrating composure rather than aggression. When an alien child, a species unaccustomed to predators, stepped forward trembling, Ghost lowered himself to the floor, head even with the child's eyes, tail relaxed, body language signaling peace. The chamber was silent. Every delegate's gaze followed the wolf's calculated movements. Fear had transformed into awe. Hale spoke, voice steady. Observe. Wolves are precise. They detect lies, anticipate danger, protect their pack. They are neither mindless nor weak. What you see is intelligence honed by evolution, by cooperation, by survival. Murmurs spread. Some aliens nodded subtly, others whispered urgently to one another. Hale's point had landed. This was no ordinary predator, and perhaps the humans were not as primitive as the Dominion had long claimed. Valtor's eyes blazed. He moved to intervene, but Ghost reacted first. With barely a twitch, the wolf sniffed the commander's hidden vest, detecting the faint chemical signature of a concealed defensive device. Ghost growled, low and deliberate, enough to signal warning without unnecessary violence. Valtor froze, the assembly witnessing the predator's precision. The wolf had assessed, anticipated, and identified a threat before any of them had realized it existed. Hale's voice cut through the tension. You see what I mean? The wolf does not attack without reason, but it identifies danger faster than any mechanical device or trained soldier you rely upon. This is survival intelligence, and it is why our species endures. The chamber fell into a hushed silence, the weight of his words sinking into alien minds unaccustomed to such displays of controlled power and partnership. Valtor's expression darkened. He had been challenged not by a human, but by a human and a wolf acting as one entity. Hale pressed his advantage. You think us weak. You think us extinct in knowledge, in capability, in instinct. But you are wrong. We survive. We adapt. And we bring what you cannot imagine back into the light. The council allowed a brief moment of quiet as the delegates processed the revelation. Eyes lingered on Ghost, observing the subtle intelligence in his gaze, the poised strength in his stance. Some scribbled notes, others sent silent signals across the chamber. Hale could sense the momentum shifting, the narrative slowly tilting in his favor. Valtor clenched his claws, a hiss escaping him, but he said nothing. Hale knew this was not defeat, it was the calm before the storm. Ghost pressed slightly closer, muscles taut, and Hale placed a steady hand on his flank. Together they waited, poised, commanding attention not with volume or violence but with the undeniable assertion of presence and truth. And as the doors to the chamber sealed behind the last late delegate, Hale realized the council had seen something no one else could have predicted. The wolf, once declared extinct, had entered a galaxy that refused to acknowledge its survival, and in doing so had begun to rewrite the rules of power. The real test was just beginning, and Hale knew that what happened next would determine not only his fate but the fate of a species the Dominion thought dead. Hale stood in the center of the council chamber, Ghost at his side, feeling the weight of 1,000 alien eyes pressing against him. Every species present was waiting, not just for words but for proof. Hale knew that rhetoric alone would not sway beings who measured credibility in data streams and genetic archives. He pulled a compact holodouble from his uniform, flicking it to life. Holographic sequences of wolf DNA spiraled upward, each helix glowing in intricate detail, each base pair a testament to survival. Ghost shifted subtly, tail brushing Hale's leg as if reinforcing the message without uttering a sound. These sequences, Hale began, voice steady, belong to the last known terrestrial wolf. They are not engineered. They are not synthetic. They are a record of what Earth preserved against extinction. He projected images of Ghost as a pup, the cryolab and the barren landscapes from which he had rescued him. The council murmured, delegates leaning forward, some whispering urgently into their translators. Valtor's eyes narrowed, scales bristling. You claim what your species destroyed survives. How do we know this is not a manipulation? A genetic fabrication intended to deceive? Hale met his gaze evenly. Because you will find no genetic marker of dominion interference. These are natural sequences. And the wolf itself demonstrates every trait I am about to describe. Ghost's stance stiffened slightly, aware that all eyes now measured him, and Hale allowed the creature a moment to move freely. Ghost circled a small section of the floor, sniffing, ears alert, then returned to Hale without hesitation. His intelligence, patience, and awareness spoke louder than any words could. He continued, "Wolves are apex predators, yes, but more than that, they are social strategists. Their pack structure, loyalty, and instinctive cooperation are traits that helped humans thrive. Humans did not conquer their world alone. They evolved alongside these creatures, learning from them. We share instincts that are older than empires and faster than fleets." A delegate from the Andari cluster tilted its head. "You suggest that human survival is intertwined with a predator species we believed extinct?" Hale nodded. "Exactly. Wolves are not tools, they are partners. Observing them teaches us how to anticipate threats, coordinate actions, and survive when the odds are impossible. The Dominion miscalculated when they ignored these traits. They assumed extinction was final, permanent. They were wrong." Valtor hissed, stepping forward, claws clicking against the polished floor. "This is irrelevant. The Council will not condone the harboring of dangerous organisms. This wolf violates every interspecies protocol you have broken." Hale lifted a hand to halt him. "Danger is in the eye of the observer. The wolf poses no threat to those who respect life. Its presence demonstrates skill, intelligence, and restraint, qualities the Dominion fears because they are incapable of seeing them as anything other than threats." Ghost pressed closer, sniffing the commander's leg, detecting faint chemical signatures. Valtor recoiled, his eyes widening imperceptibly, and the chamber shifted as delegates noticed the reaction. Ghost was not attacking, yet every being present sensed the predator's analytical judgment. One misstep could be catastrophic. One correct interpretation could inspire awe. The wolf, Hale realized, was both messenger and arbiter. Hale activated another projection, showing historical Terran archives. Images of wolves hunting in coordinated packs, humans observing, recording, and learning from them flooded the chamber. Data streams detailed their impact on survival, on hunting efficiency, on protection strategies. Each point reinforced his argument. Wolves were not mere animals. They were catalysts of human ingenuity, partners in adaptation. The murmurs grew. Some delegates exchanged uncertain glances. Others adjusted their positions, re-evaluating previously held assumptions. Hale's words were not merely statements. They were revelations, shaking foundations of interstellar authority. Valtor's hiss cut through the chamber. "Fabrications. Propaganda. You cannot expect the Council to accept anecdotal evidence and genetic sequences from a species known for deception." Hale's eyes narrowed. "Then witness this." He gestured toward Ghost. The wolf stepped forward calmly, approaching a juvenile delegate of a species known for hypersensitivity to predators. The child froze, terrified, yet Ghost lowered his head, ears back, tail low, and allowed the juvenile to touch his fur. Every delegate observed the scene. Instinctive fear confronted by controlled intelligence, hesitation answered with trust, violence averted by understanding. The chamber held its breath. Hale's voice carried across the room. "Observe what intelligence tempered by loyalty and self-control can achieve. Wolves do not destroy indiscriminately. They do not act without purpose. Their greatest strength is the ability to choose when to fight and when to protect. This is why we survived as a species and why this wolf, the last of its kind, still exists." Whispers turned into questions. The wolf's actions had provided proof more compelling than words. Some delegates reached for hollowables, cross-referencing historical Dominion records against Hale's evidence. Slowly, incredulity gave way to consideration. Valtor's claws tightened, scales darkening with fury. "You manipulate perception with theatrics. This council will not be swayed by showmanship and spectacle." Hale stepped closer, voice calm but firm. "This is no show. What you fear is the truth. You hunted them into near extinction not because they were dangerous but because you could not control them. Wolves were never tools. They were never meant to obey your will. You failed to understand what humans, and wolves, can endure." A murmur of agreement spread from delegates of the Ternari and Velix factions, species long subjected to Dominion oversight. Some had begun questioning the Dominion's narrative for the first time. Hale could sense the tide shifting. Then Ghost, without prompting, rose onto the edge of a dais, tilting his head as though acknowledging the chamber itself. His presence filled the room with a tension that was neither aggressive nor submissive, but undeniable. Every eye turned, every mind engaged. Hale knew the council would not forget this display. Not the wolf. Not the human who had brought him here. Valtor recoiled, anger and disbelief written across his face. "This is not over. Your defiance will have consequences." Hale responded simply, voice low but resolute. "The truth is always inconvenient for those who wish to deny it." The chamber remained hushed, the weight of revelation lingering. Ghost descended from the dais, returning to Hale's side, muscles relaxed but alert. Hale placed a hand on the wolf's flank, feeling the steady heartbeat beneath fur that had once been thought lost forever. Together they had done more than present evidence. They had unsettled an empire, demonstrated capability, and challenged the authority of a council that believed it understood all life in the galaxy. And as the council adjourned to debate in whispered channels, Hale realized the most dangerous part of their presence had only just begun. The Dominion would act, and the galaxy would soon witness what happens when a species declared extinct returns not as prey, but as a force the universe had underestimated. The next move would decide not only the fate of the last wolf but the future of humanity itself. The Citadel's corridors had never felt more hostile. Hale and Ghost moved through the shadowed maintenance tunnels, the artificial lights flickering overhead, casting long, shifting shadows. Hale's boots struck the metal grates with a deliberate rhythm, but Ghost's paws made no sound at all. The wolf's senses detected every vibration, every distant footstep, every subtle shift in the air. Hale had learned to trust him implicitly. The creature's awareness had saved his life more than once, and he knew it would again. A sharp hiss echoed down the passage and Hale ducked instinctively. A Dominion agent emerged from a hatch, a concealed weapon aimed. Ghost lunged before Hale could react, teeth flashing, a blur of white and muscle. The agent froze mid-step, staring into eyes that glimmered with precise calculation and raw power. Hale fired a stun dart, immobilizing the intruder without causing permanent damage. Ghost returned to his side, tail swishing, eyes still scanning. They did not speak, but Hale felt the silent confirmation. They were ready for anything. The Council's earlier deference had not changed Dominion plans. Hale knew the attempt on his life was just the opening move. The corridors were littered with security drones, their sensors sweeping relentlessly. Ghost led, weaving through shadows, avoiding cameras, slipping beneath patrol routes. Hale followed, adrenaline sharpening his focus. Every step, every breath had to be perfect. The last wolf had survived decades of isolation and cryopreservation. Hale could not afford to fail now. They reached a junction where two maintenance tunnels met, and a squad of Dominion hunters blocked the path. Hale whispered a command and Ghost dropped low, circling to flank them. The hunters fired, plasma bolts sizzling against the reinforced walls. Hale dove behind a support beam, taking cover as Ghost moved with fluid precision, intercepting projectiles with sheer timing and calculated dodges. In seconds, the hunters were subdued, stunned but alive, leaving a trail of tension and warning for those who might follow. The chase intensified as they approached the Citadel's lower hangars. Surveillance cameras tracked their movements and a fleet of drones converged, their sensors pinging constantly. Hale knew they couldn't stay hidden forever. Ghost paused, ears pricked, sniffing the air. Hale followed the wolf's gaze to a narrow maintenance shaft that bypassed the main hangars. It was tight, claustrophobic, but the wolf squeezed through easily. Hale followed, feeling the metal press against his shoulders. The wolf's instincts guided him through every twist, every obstruction, leading them toward the central chamber where the Council's deliberations continued. Valtor's wrath was palpable across the Citadel. His broadcasts crackled through the chamber, demanding surrender. "Return the predator to me, human, or face execution. Your defiance will not be tolerated." Hale ignored the threats, focusing on the wolf's guidance. Ghost had already sensed the underlying tensions, the subtle movements of Dominion forces preparing to trap them. They emerged into a service corridor that overlooked the main council chamber. Hale peered down and saw delegates scrambling, some swayed by his earlier evidence, others attempting to enforce Valtor's will. The Dominion's control was fracturing. Ghost growled low, muscles coiled, ready to strike. Hale understood perfectly. The wolf's presence alone was altering the balance of power. An ambush awaited in the chamber below. Dominion soldiers had stationed themselves along the perimeter, plasma rifles trained on the doors. Hale pressed against the wall, hand on Ghost's flank, and whispered, "We go now." The wolf moved first, a blur of white, leaping onto a catwalk railing, then descending silently to intercept a group of guards. Their reflexes were no match for his precision. Hale followed, dispatching enemies with rapid efficiency, but always careful not to overextend. Every move was a combination of human ingenuity and wolf instinct, a synergy that stunned even the most seasoned Dominion watchers. As they entered the main chamber, the council members froze. Ghost paused at the threshold, gaze sweeping the room, muscles taut but controlled. Valtor stepped forward, claws flexing, face twisted in fury. "This ends now, Hale. You will surrender the creature or die." Hale planted his feet, hand resting on Ghost's shoulder, voice steady and unwavering. "You have already lost control. This isn't about surrender. It's about truth. You tried to erase a species, but you underestimated resilience. You tried to intimidate humanity, but you misjudged loyalty and courage. Your actions will not stand." Valtor lunged, but Ghost intercepted, teeth flashing with precision, knocking the commander off balance. Hale advanced, every movement deliberate, every strike calculated, exploiting Valtor's aggression without overcommitting. The room erupted in chaos, delegates ducking, guards firing, but the human and wolf moved with unmatched coordination. They were not a single predator and prey, they were a force of nature, adaptive, intelligent, unstoppable. The council watched, riveted. Aliens whispered in disbelief as the human demonstrated hand-to-hand skill honed through years of frontier combat, and the wolf executed maneuvers that no predator should be capable of. Each attack was precise, each defense flawless. The tide shifted further, delegates beginning to question the Dominion's narrative. Their shock turned to awe, and Hale realized that this confrontation was more than survival, it was revelation. Finally, Valtor stumbled back, wounded but conscious, cornered by both man and wolf. Hale stood over him, voice calm but carrying the weight of authority. "Your reign over fear and control ends here. The galaxy sees what you refuse to understand. Strength is not dominance. It is resilience, intelligence, and loyalty. Wolves and humans endure because we fight for more than ourselves. You should have remembered that." The council fell silent, the echoes of Hale's words resonating. Ghost lowered his stance, not in submission but in controlled observation, signaling the end of immediate conflict. Hale reached down, placing a steady hand on the wolf's shoulder. Together, they had confronted the Dominion's aggression, exposed the cracks in its authority, and survived a calculated assassination attempt. Outside, the hum of the Citadel's systems continued, but within the chamber, the balance of power had shifted. Delegates whispered, some cautiously supportive, others plotting next steps, but all aware that the human and his wolf had irrevocably altered the perception of strength and survival. Hale met Ghost's amber gaze, feeling the silent affirmation between them. They had survived, and the fight for truth and justice in the galaxy had only just begun. The Dominion had struck first, but humanity and its last wolf had struck back harder. The coming days would demand more courage, more strategy, and more trust. Hale and Ghost would face them together, prepared for whatever the galaxy had yet to reveal. Hale and Ghost stepped into the council chamber once more, this time with the weight of inevitability pressing down on them. The room was tense, delegates frozen in anticipation, aware that what transpired now would decide not only the fate of a species but the reputation of humanity itself. Ghost moved with a quiet authority, each paw step deliberate, every movement radiating control and precision. Hale followed, his posture unwavering, shoulders squared, eyes scanning for threats, mind already calculating the outcomes of every action. The chamber seemed to shrink around them, every surface reflecting the intensity of what was about to unfold. Valtor emerged from the shadowed end of the hall, scales darkened with fury, claws flexing as if the very walls might tremble beneath his rage. "This ends now, human," he hissed. "Surrender the predator or witness your species fall into oblivion." Hale's eyes met the commander's, a calm storm in their depths. "It's not about surrender. It's about truth. You tried to erase a species, to rewrite history, to suppress life itself. You failed. You underestimated what survives and what fights back with loyalty and courage." Ghost stepped forward, muscles coiled, head low, eyes tracking Valtor's every movement. The wolf was more than a creature. He was a presence, an extension of Hale's own resolve, instinct and intellect fused into a single entity. Valtor lunged, claws striking through the air with lethal intent, but Ghost intercepted with a precision that seemed preternatural. Hale followed, closing the distance, fists and body moving in perfect coordination, a dance of human skill and wolf instinct. The room erupted into chaos. Delegates ducked or pressed against walls, some attempting to intervene, others paralyzed by awe. Plasma bolts and energy pulses lit the chamber, but Hale and Ghost navigated them with fluidity, anticipating every move. The wolf's senses caught vibrations too subtle for human perception, alerting Hale to dangers he could not yet see. Every strike was calculated, every dodge deliberate. They were not merely surviving, they were demonstrating the potential of partnership between species, the symbiosis that had once made humanity and wolves an unstoppable force. Valtor faltered under the relentless precision of their combined assault. Each attack he launched was met with counter. Each advantage he thought he held evaporated under the coordination of human ingenuity and primal instinct. Hale struck with calculated force, exploiting openings that only the wolf's interventions revealed. Ghost's teeth and claws were instruments of precision, never gratuitous, always controlled. The chamber itself seemed to hold its breath, witnessing a battle that transcended mere violence. A battle for respect, for recognition, for survival. Sweat dripped from Hale's brow, mixing with the grime and tension of the fight. His breathing was measured, controlled, each inhale and exhale synchronized with Ghost's movements. He realized, with a clarity born from years of frontier survival, that the wolf was not just a companion, but a teacher, a mirror of the human capacity for loyalty, courage, and calculated risk. Ghost's amber eyes met his briefly mid-combat, and Hale felt a surge of connection, the silent affirmation that together, they were unstoppable. Finally Valtor stumbled, cornered, his energy nearly spent. Hale advanced, placing a hand firmly on Ghost's shoulder, grounding the wolf even as the creature radiated restrained power. The commander hissed, claws extended, yet hesitation flickered in his eyes. Hale leaned close, voice low but carrying through the chamber with unmistakable authority. Your reign of fear ends here. You cannot erase life. You cannot suppress truth. Witness the resilience you tried to destroy. Ghost stepped forward, lowering his head, eyes locked on Valtor, body taut but controlled. The wolf growled, not a threat, but a demonstration of absolute awareness, a display of the intelligence and judgment that the Dominion had failed to recognize in the first place. Valtor's claws trembled, scales darkening further as he realized the futility of his aggression. The council observed in stunned silence. The last wolf, declared extinct, had not only survived but commanded authority, guiding the human who had raised him through a storm of violence and deception. Hale straightened, shoulders squared, eyes sweeping the chamber. Delegates murmured in disbelief, some in cautious agreement, others grappling with the implications of what they had witnessed. Humanity and its last wolf had proven that survival was not merely a matter of brute force, but of intelligence, loyalty, and courage honed through millennia. Hale understood that this moment would redefine perceptions, not just of his species, but of what it meant to endure against impossible odds. Valtor let out a hiss that was more frustration than sound, his fury impotent in the face of undeniable proof. Hale stepped closer, voice unwavering. You hunted them into near extinction and yet one survives. You thought humanity weak and yet we endure. You miscalculated the value of loyalty, intelligence, and adaptation. Today you see the cost of underestimating the impossible. The commander fell back, defeated, breathing hard, the fight leaving him spent and humiliated. Ghost lowered his stance, tail sweeping behind him, head resting briefly against Hale's shoulder, signaling the end of immediate conflict. Hale placed a hand atop the wolf's head, feeling the steady pulse of life that had endured against time, technology, and tyranny. Together they had not only survived, they had claimed victory in a chamber built to suppress them, proving that the strength of humanity and its allies could not be measured in conventional terms. The council, once silent, now erupted into discussions, delegates debating the revelations, the implications, and the authority of the Dominion. Some whispered cautiously in support, others began questioning the commander's narrative, but all had witnessed a force that had altered the balance of power with intellect and instinct combined. Hale observed the shifting dynamics, understanding that the battle was over, but the war of perception and influence had only begun. He looked down at Ghost, amber eyes glinting with intelligence, loyalty, and calm authority. We've shown them, Hale murmured. They can't ignore what survives. They can't erase what endures. Ghost nudged his hand, acknowledging the sentiment without need for words. The wolf's howl rose in the chamber, a haunting, echoing call that resonated through corridors and into the hearts of those present. It was a declaration of survival, of resilience, and of the bond between human and predator that no empire could destroy. As the echoes faded, Hale felt the weight of responsibility and triumph settle over him. Humanity had been underestimated, dismissed, nearly erased from history, and yet here they were, represented by a human and the last wolf of a species thought extinct. The galaxy had been forced to witness that survival was more than biology. It was courage, intelligence, and the unbreakable bonds forged in the crucible of adversity. Hale took a slow breath, Ghost's warmth at his side, and knew that together, they had not only survived but claimed a legacy that would be remembered long after the Citadel's walls had faded into memory. The last wolf had returned. Humanity had endured. And the galaxy would never forget the power of loyalty, instinct, and the courage to defy extinction.